bad. Yeah.
It gets really bad. It actually becomes, I mean, even if it's something you've struggled with, suddenly it's like, I hear this again and again. I can't manage this. I say, I'm going to do this, and then I don't, and I reach for XYZ, and I feel like I'm out of control. I feel like it's not my body. So somebody like that who wants to work in a more gradual way, they can literally just kind of take one of these things and work on it really deeply. So, okay, I'm going to work on, getting my protein in, and this is going to be my focus for 1 to 2 weeks, and that's my whole target. Because I really think one of the problems that we're facing around food changes and understanding food in general is a pretty deep decision fatigue. That this is, especially if you're reached your 40s and your 50s, it's probably not the first time I don't know if I've ever had anyone come to me that this is their first eating intervention. Most people have done a million different things, tried a bunch of different things.
Yes.
And so one of the issues is we have to make so many different decisions, and we're getting all kinds of different conflicting information from the media and the latest trend that we just are like, ugh. And so this is designed to really take that away and bring you down to the foundation. Now, it's not optimizing. We're not super, drilling into calories and we're doing a broad stroke to help your system stabilize wherever it is in this new hormonal framework. Mm-hmm. So this gets you a good part of the way.
Yes.
And then, and go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but along those lines, are there certain foods that you find to be extremely effective to almost like kickstart the process when it comes to people who may be experiencing like lower estrogen or the sluggishness, or in general, just foods that help to cleanse and get people back on track?
Yes and no. Not necessarily specific foods, but the thing that is the most helpful that people typically aren't kind of keying into is your fiber. Mm-hmm. Your fiber intake. When you start to, I've broken down carbs into 3 really general categories. One of them is vegetable carbs, and this needs to, for a lot of reasons, this needs to make up the biggest part of your diet. The second one I call fiber carbs. And those are the fruits and vegetables and grains and beans that have a high percentage of fiber to total carbohydrate. And we use those strategically because women are tend to be very carb sensitive, especially if you're overweight, especially if you've got sugar issues. So you need to watch that. And so there's a timing issue involved in the program, kind of when you eat them, when they're absorbed most easily. And then the third category I call craving carbs, because honestly, everything else falls into that bucket. And that includes your wine that turns instantly into sugar that you absorb through your mouth, not even through the digestive tract. And the simple carbohydrates, all your white powders, flour, sugar, and even really super, super sweet fruits. So anything that would be, in the way I talk about it, is if you know that you're sensitive to those things, if you can't stop eating them. If you have 1 or 2 bites and you can't put it down, you need to finish that bag of potato chips, or you'll have a little bit now, but then an hour later you're diving into the bread bag, or you're diving into so that's the way I break the carbs down. And that helps you once you start to lean into vegetables to kind of fill you up. That one change actually sets off a myriad of little actions that will slowly bring you back to where you need to be. I mean, there's a few other things going on, but you're bulking up with the high water content, high fiber foods. You're taking in the live energy, the life energy. All of those things are just really feeding your micronutrient levels, which also around this age tend to be low. Mm-hmm. Pretty much everybody is running low on something. Yeah. I mean, we see it a lot: magnesium, vitamin D, almost always they're just kind of creeping along. And so starting to do that starts to bring up your baseline. And then the fiber itself can kickstart your liver.
So this is interesting that you're bringing up fiber, because I'm a huge believer that a lot of the, quote, diets out there are really not putting fiber into focus at all.
Yes,
In
it's
fact,
a big problem.
Quite the opposite. If all you're eating is meat and you're really not focused on vegetables or, even like what I like to call the single ingredient super grains that can deliver enormous benefit when they're eaten in the right quantity, mostly.
Yep.
That we're really missing out. I mean, what would you say in general about, people who have decided to cut out carbs completely? I feel that's really a hazardous place.
Well, it's a really tricky call because there's no question that some form of mild ketosis is immediately balancing to your blood sugar. And for a lot of people, it will kickstart that fat burning. It shifts your metabolism. So you switch from burning sugars to burning fats. And that's very adaptive for a very large number of people. But I'll tell you what happens. If you're a woman and if you've had bouncy blood sugar, by the time you hit this point, you are leaning so hard on your gallbladder that a lot of women end up losing their gallbladders. Literally, it's common. It's like, oh, I've had my and they're not worried about it. Like, oh, it's not a problem. Your gallbladder produces the bile, which breaks down fats. So without a gallbladder, digestion of any kind of fats is going to be tremendously difficult for your body. So even if it worked for you for an extended period of time, which I haven't seen that. The women who are, at the age, by the time I work with them, they're really needing to come back from that sort of extreme kind of eating. Even if you're able to do that, once your gallbladder's gone, you can't metabolize fats anymore. You're really stuck. Then you're working kind of, carefully with things to help you with digestive enzymes and things like that to help you get the job done. But it really hits you, and it hits women at around this age.
That juncture.
Yes. And so, I hesitate because I do a lot of work with diabetics, and that it's tremendously helpful for diabetes, but I am not a fan of the keto diet. I'm not. Yeah. Because even at that point, because I see what happens when people are taking in so much fat over that length of time, and also the crowding out of the vegetables.
Well, and my concern is really the type of fat.
Yes, that you slide into
much more saturated fat in these plans than I would like to see. So what advice would you give? I mean, obviously we adapt to every phase in our life. I mean, as a teenager, you've got hormones to deal with. As a new mom, you've got hormones to deal with, or when you're pregnant and going through premenopause, perimenopause, it's all a shift in your body. What do you think? Let's say we could start really young and you're now speaking to an audience that is like, okay, I'm not in that life stage, but eventually I will be.
Right.
What would be your best recommendation for people to start practicing right now in anticipation? Because I always feel like the better you're prepared to head into a life stage or a situation, the better equipped you are to handle it. So
no, I agree. I think there are two things that you can do preventively, and I think your audience and your message really speaks to these already very directly. One of them is this notion of eating a really clean diet. Because the issues that happen when you eat a lot of processed foods or even too much food in an ongoing way, it's cumulative. We think that this is going to be, I can handle it, I can eat this, and the next day I'm great. But if you're doing those things, or if you're drowning yourself in coffee to get yourself going in the morning, and then sort of quick dosing on sort of quick pick-me-up carbs, and then you're putting yourself to sleep with a little glass of wine because things are so intense, you're really setting your system up to have a very difficult time with that final sort of female hormone transition. So keeping your food really clean, keeping your system, keeping your transit time really clean. So you've got your bowels moving, you're really moving your body so that
I appreciate that. I'm going to use that transit time. I love that.
It's really true. You don't want, if your food's sitting in there for days and days, this is the beginning of that kind of toxic buildup.
Well, I have to chime in on this because I experienced this firsthand with a family member who had to have a colonoscopy and they just couldn't do it because it was just too impactful.
Wow. Holy cow.
I'm just saying, like, if you, in general, for everybody listening, if you are feeling all of the side effects that Jeannette was talking about, whether it be fatigue or leaky gut, like you just don't feel like things are flowing right, you need to address your transit time is affected. Like you really need to think about that and seriously consider more cleansing foods and upping your fiber intake.
Big time. And the number one way to do that, and this is sort of my second recommendation, is start leaning into the vegetables. I really can't stress enough how life-changing they are over the long term. They do so many things for our system. I mean, they fill us up in the right way. And I already said they get our micronutrient stores up, but there's something kind of alchemical, and this is now not science. This is now in the realm of straight observation. Something happens to people. We lighten up. I watch this happen to women. We lighten up, we brighten up, our skin changes, we calm down a little bit. There's a little bit more connection to the seasons and the earth, and the invitation on another level of this hormonal change is to tune in, to slow down, to rest a little bit more. I like to call this the queen phase. We're stepping into our power. We're stepping into our authority, and something about eating that rainbow, eating live plants, fresh plants, high quality plants, something assists us in that move. And this is really esoteric, this is really kind of, but I'm telling you, it's something that I have seen again and again and again. It helps.
I couldn't agree with you more. I literally feel like, not to sound hippy dippy, but like your life force of eating plants, something that's come from the ground and has been nurtured, does vibe, and you do feel that. I've heard that from many customers who have increased their juicing intake. They're doing a lot of green juices, especially low sugar green juice, and they feel like they have unbelievable energy. And
the life energy in food gives you life, and it reverses the aging process. Like it slows you down. Like sugar ages you super quickly, all forms, really quickly, in your skin, in your energy, and vegetables do the opposite. They're like
I'm a big fan of those green veggies, especially.
Yes. Yeah, those are kind of the high test of the gasoline. Yeah.
Get up in your greens. I am just curious. I'm just going to throw this at you, and we totally didn't talk about it. So if you don't feel comfortable answering it, by all means.
No worries.
I've started really exploring the benefits of CBD oil. And I'm curious what you think about it, if you use it, if you recommend it, because I'm seeing the data is just so overwhelming, and hemp in general is such a superfood.
It really is. I mean, I've been using hemp oil for years and years on my food as like flax oil and hemp oil are spectacular as cold salad oils. They're great. And I'm a fan of CBD oil. And here's one of the things that it can be helpful with, that stress level, that kind of low grade, anxious. Some people tend toward depression. Some people tend toward anxiety, but it feels like a moodiness. People talk about it like a blanket. Like I feel like there's a blanket over me, or I feel like my nerves have like the raw endings, I just can't settle. Like this is a common thing that comes up that is definitely associated, with female hormone shifting. And CBD can kind of take the edge off of that. And honestly, I've been talking about the wine because it comes up so often, in my groups. You can kind of make a swap. You could
I really like that as a recommendation because, something that I've started exploring is, and I'm a big believer in retraining your taste buds to crave more bitter and sour foods. But I've been drinking dandelion tea, and in the evenings, instead of drinking wine and having some of the CBD drops in there, and it helps me sleep better. And it gives me that like mellowness and that same sort of like sensation that you're talking about. So I think that's something